Thanks very much, Mr Acting Deputy President. I rise to respond to the eventual response from Senator Brandis to my question about the Pope's recent climate encyclical, and I was somewhat amazed to hear what I can only describe as faux outrage from Senator Brandis that I might note what is a well-regarded fact that the Prime Minister is a Catholic. Apparently that's in some way disgusting to Senator Brandis. As I said in the course of the question, I was in no way referring to that in a disparaging manner. I was merely wondering that, given the Prime Minister hasn't listened to the scientists about climate change, thinking people can only hope that he would now listen to the leader of his own faith, who has said that the world needs to take action on climate change, that we have a shared global responsibility. Now, I celebrate the fact that the Pope has come out acknowledging that science, and we urge this government, if they won't listen to the scientists, then perhaps they will at least listen to the Pope. But apparently Senator Brandis found that confronting and offensive, which is quite peculiar. He used that as a premise, of course, not to answer the question, and one wonders whether or not they have such a visceral reaction to saying the Lord's Prayer, which we say every morning in this place. Well, which some of us say, predominantly those on the government benches. Now, I also mentioned that the Pope had said that we need to deal with climate change because it will hit the world's poorest the hardest. And again, Senator Brandis resorted to that old chestnut about coal. He thinks it's in fact very good for humanity, not just good for humanity like the Prime Minister and Senator Cormann have previously said. In fact, it's now very good for humanity. And the incorrect premise on which he asserted that was that he says coal is cheap and that coal will somehow alleviate global poverty. Well, coal is cheap in Australia because this government continues the billions of dollars of subsidies that goes to the fossil fuel industry. And as we know, renewable energy is now reaching parity. Wind has reached parity, even with those subsidies. So were those subsidies to be removed, as the Greens have long called for, in fact renewable energy would be infinitely cheaper and of course infinitely better for the planet. Now, Senator Brandis also somehow reckons that coal is going to be a solution to global poverty. Well, I've got news for you, Senator Brandis, and it's something that experts have been contending for quite a while now. There is no electricity network in those poor parts of rural India, and even if there was an electricity grid, the coal would be at such a price that they could not afford to purchase it. The solution to energy poverty in developing nations is clean, distributed, renewable energy. Now, most people accept that that is flagrantly obvious, and I would urge the government to go and do some homework in that respect. Now, in relation to the final part of my question, where I asked whether the government would actually base their climate policies on science or faith or anything at all, really, other than the lobbying of the fossil fuel donors that walk these halls very frequently. And he contended that, yes, they would base their climate policy on science. Well, that's very interesting, given that they abolished the Climate Change Authority shortly after taking government. And in fact, they've sacked most of the scientists that used to work for the CSIRO on climate and other matters. So that's wonderful that they intellectually accept that they will base a policy on science. Where are those scientists, and are you now going to in fact reinstate them? I certainly hope so. What we see from this government is really continued climate science denial and continued head in the sand to the actual positive opportunities that this presents us globally and domestically. We've got some of the world's best sunshine. We've got some wonderful tidal, geothermal and wind deposits. Instead, we see the government in a pathetic deal with the crossbench that it's at great pains to deny, but although everybody knows it's about to pass through the Parliament this afternoon, instead we have a wind farm commissioner. And if this government was really concerned about the health impacts of energy, it would, as I said last week, establish a coal mine commissioner to look at the awful impacts of both coal mine fires that so frequently get out of control, particulates, and of course the health impacts of climate change itself. This government just does not get the climate science. It clearly now doesn't even want to accept the Pope's encyclical, so I don't know what their guiding principle is anymore except the money that they get in donations from the fossil fuel sector.
Thank you, Senator.